Hello, my friends. It's once again time for a 2,000-kilometre trip across Europe. We'll be driving with the whole family in our Model 3 Performance, fully packed. So we'll get a closer look on how this car manages as a holiday traveller. In this episode, we're going to the Baltic Sea, to a place called Timmendorf Beach, which is a popular spot on the northeastern coast side of Germany. So if you want to get a closer look on how it is travelling long distances in a Model 3 as a family with a small kid, then follow us as we go on this 800-kilometre journey to the German seaside. We headed off at 9 in the morning after having fully packed the car. As you see, we have a couple of bags in the front, a few more in the back, and the boot was also nearly fully packed with bags, blankets, a stroller, as well as a travel crib for the kid. And with us all packed and ready, it was time to drive off. The car has been fully charged. It's a 400-kilometre drive, and the navigation has planned a charging stop in 270 kilometres, at which we should have 12% battery left. Now that may sound like a high consumption, but keep in mind that the weather is just around freezing temperatures, and we also have a high average consumption due to having a sportier driving style, especially with the Autobahn here in Germany. If we had been driving a petrol car, Google Maps estimates the arrival to be at exactly 1:30, so it's going to be interesting to see how much longer the trip will be in an electric car. Although to be fair, with the family on board, we would have to make a stop halfway regardless. So the fact that we need a charging stop doesn't really make a difference. Nevertheless, let's see what happens. Our strategy was to run down the battery with a higher average speed so that we would make the most of a longer charging stop. I chose to remove the Tesla Charge Planner as I wanted to manually select a charger myself, which would have the battery closer to 5% state of charge, making charging more efficient. With the streets nice and empty, it was a delightful steady cruise and we were making good way, heading towards our first charging stop. With the sun out and having driven our first 100 kilometres, let's have a look at our consumption. And so far, we've been averaging 237 watt-hours per kilometre, which I think isn't that bad considering our travelling speed. Granted, we could probably make the entire trip without a charge driving slower, but since we would need to make a pit stop regardless, we might as well try and cut down the total time spent on the road. And just for kicks, see what happens when you drive past the police fast on the Autobahn. Nothing. Fully legal. The only thing I wish the police would do more about are handing out huge fines for the people that hog the middle lane when it's free on the right side. These people really ruin the entire flow of traffic and make for some extremely dangerous situations when other drivers are coming up fast behind you. Now I know that you should always drive according to the conditions, but unfortunately the Autobahn is full of reckless drivers that will tailgate you within an inch, even when there is clearly traffic ahead of you. If you're one of those people, please be more considerate towards the danger you're actually creating. And with my small rant over, we've nearly arrived at our first charging stop. We've covered 262 kilometres over the past 2 hours, and upon arrival, we had 8% charge left in the batteries. We still have 150 kilometres to go, and the car estimates a 15-minute charge to get there. We're not in a hurry though. The kid needs to blow off some energy, and we also want to get something to eat. After having let the kid explore a bit around and having bought some snacks and coffee, we made our way back to the car. We weren't really in a hurry, so we figured we'd just eat outside in the nice weather and get the car charged up even further. And before we knew it, an hour had already passed and we were ready to continue. While we had spent a full hour here, we were actually only 30 minutes behind the Google Maps estimate that didn't include a charging stop. With a topped-up battery, we were back on the road again for a 1 hour and 40 minutes drive. However, almost as soon as we hit the highway, the kid immediately fell asleep. It was also now way past his regular nap time. Not wanting to arrive too early and have him sleep as much as possible, we decided to hypermile the last 150 kilometres to the hotel. The original state of charge estimate upon arrival was at 57%, but I'm quite sure with this consumption we're going to arrive with a lot more. And after a short drive later, we've arrived at Timmendorfer Beach. Since we drove with just 90 on the highway, we of course added another 20 minutes or so. In total though, the final arrival time was 20 minutes past 2. which adds 50 minutes to the estimate without charging. All things considered, with a 1-hour break and a 2-hour Hypermiling Drive, I honestly think that is very fair. The kid also slept the entire last stretch, so I was quite happy with the way the drive turned out. Now let's get checked into the hotel. For anyone interested, we booked our stay at Landhaus Karstens Hotel. This is the first time being here, and I'll be happy to share our thoughts. Now it's worth noting that while the main part of the hotel is in this older building, they do have a separate, more modern building as well, which is also where we parked our car. We did, however, prefer to be in the same building where breakfast is served, so even if offered the more modern accommodation, we decided to stay in the main residence. I believe we booked one of the standard rooms. It's nice and spacious enough, and we only booked a few days to try it out. The hotel and rooms do have that typical old hotel kind of smell, which frankly isn't too nice, but that's to be expected, I guess. This is our first time being here, and our priority was to be close to the water and to be at a family-friendly hotel, where people aren't too concerned if the kid gets a bit noisy in the restaurant. But let's go outside and see what we actually came here for, which is the Baltic Sea, or the famous Ostsee as the Germans call it. With a picturesque shoreline stretching about 7 kilometers, it's a popular destination for both relaxation and seaside fun. The long, sandy beach invites visitors to swim, sunbathe, or take leisurely walks along the elegant promenade, lined with cozy cafes, restaurants, and boutique shops. We went for a quick bite to eat and then back on the beach again. And while it was only around 10 degrees outside with a water temperature of 6 degrees, that wasn't going to stop me from going for a quick swim in the sea. And with a side entrance from the hotel, you can go straight to the beach. Really practical and convenient. After dinner and a couple of drinks on the promenade, we went for yet another stroll along the sea. While Timmendorfer Beach has a great residential vibe to it, it does lack a couple of beachside cafes or restaurants. Most of the places are located along the promenade, and you're missing out on this gorgeous view that's just a stone toss away. The next morning I woke up at 6 to catch an early sunrise. It's something I always do. Sleeping in is overrated for me, as I'd much rather go out and enjoy the early morning breeze. I would have gone for a dip as well, but I'd probably wake up the family coming back into the room again. After having enjoyed the sunrise, I quickly went and got something from the car, and then it was time for breakfast. And while I don't like that you have to order what you want to eat in advance, the breakfast itself was good. No complaints there. We then spent the next few days enjoying the seaside. A lot of healthy strolls, a lot of fresh air, and we also went to check out the surrounding areas outside of Timmendorfer Beach. Here we are in Travemünde, which is just a few kilometers away, but has a completely different vibe to it. And it just feels very commercialised. The promenade is wide and paved, there's a lot of tourist shops selling souvenirs, and yeah, I don't know, we weren't really that impressed, to be honest. The beach itself was very nice, but the surroundings just weren't as cosy as in Timmendorf. One thing that you will notice is the abundance of these Strandkorb, which is a distinct symbol of German beach culture. When you think of German seaside resorts, Strandkorb are part of the iconic landscape. They were invented in 1882 by Wilhelm Bartelmann, a German basket maker. A woman with rheumatism requested a comfortable and sheltered way to enjoy the beach, so he came up with the first Strandkorb. It caught on fast and became a seaside essential. The design is what makes it stand out. Half cabin, half lounge chair, it provides protection from wind, sun and sand. Adjustable backrest, extendable footrests, sunshade, folding table, and often drink holders. Made with wicker and wood, usually lined with weatherproof cushions and fabric. It's basically the beach version of a cosy reading nook. Despite being over 140 years old, the design is still widely used and beloved. You can rent them on almost every beach in northern Germany, and they've even become collector's items or backyard furniture for enthusiasts. Here you can see the area that we're staying at, including Travemünde, which we wouldn't necessarily recommend for the earlier mentioned reasons. But the nice thing here is that you can just follow the entire coastline down, and you should be sure to find a place that fits your needs and wants. In case any of you have been here, I'd love to hear what you think of the area and where you have stayed. Let me know in the comments. And after a few more early sunrises, it was time for us to head back in the direction we came from, as we go to the western side of Europe and explore Amsterdam and the North Sea. But first, we had to repack the car with all the stuff we brought for these few days. It's quite amazing that we were able to fit all this inside the Model 3, considering we even had more space to utilise. It's really surprising how much cargo space it actually has. And with the car packed, the family back on board, it was time for the next 400-kilometre drive. As we left with 49% state of charge, we planned on doing the same strategy as last time. Higher speeds to deplete the battery as much as possible before our first and only long stop. And forgive me for saying this, but if you drive around with one of these "I bought this before Elon went crazy" stickers, yeah, I'll leave it at that. A feminized man, and 140 kilometers later, we were now at 4% charge, with 6 minutes left to our charging stop. What I just realized during the editing was that the car clearly had no issues going fast, even with low state of charge. It's not something I had ever thought of, but now that I do, I kind of remember seeing car tests when once some cars reach a low charge, the top speed and performance get heavily limited. I don't seem to have that issue in the Model 3 Performance, which I suppose is quite nice. And here you can see the benefits of arriving with a very low state of charge. The charging speeds, albeit for just a short while, reach a full 250 kilowatts, making charging much more efficient than if you'd arrive with 50%, as you'd then probably not get much more than 80 to 90 kilowatts. A bit of shopping and a coffee later, we were ready to get back on the road again. By the way, I bought this rear window shade in the Tesla shop, and while it is quite pricey, it covers the back window really well and offers much better sun protection than the standard tint. Visibility is a bit worse from the inside. I can still see cars coming up behind, but I can't quite see the full detail of them. I may just go ahead and get the rear tinted professionally in summer. After a 45-minute break and having reached 90% charge, we have more than enough to make it back home again. We still have a 3-hour drive, but all our charging is done for this trip. We really had no issues at all, having had to charge 2 times for these 800 kilometers. As I mentioned earlier, since I'm driving with the family on board, we would need to make a small stop after 2 hours regardless. During our breaks, we didn't focus on the charging time. We just took however long break we wanted, and coincidentally, that matched perfectly with the battery charging up fully in the meanwhile, so no time was actually lost due to charging. I will, however, admit, if I had been driving on my own, I would probably have been a bit annoyed with the charging stops, as like I've mentioned earlier, I do prefer getting to my destination as fast as possible. But I also suppose that if I would have just kept the speed at around 120, it would probably have been possible to make it there on a single charge. There were also a few destination charges in Timmendorf, so in theory, you could completely remove the time lost on charging for the entire trip. Let's have a look at our combined consumption so far, before we head towards Amsterdam. I had reset the odometer for Trip B as we left, 873 kilometers ago. The total consumption, with all our high-speed autobahn driving, was 206 watt-hours per kilometre, or 331 watts per mile. Coincidentally, this is almost exactly the same as our consumption over the last 20,000 kilometres, so I suppose this is in line with our normal driving style. Anyways, it's time for a quick layover as we get ready for the next 1,200-kilometre leg of our journey, as we head to the Netherlands and spend a couple of days in Amsterdam and check out the North Sea. If you're interested in seeing how that goes, please do subscribe to our channel, and in case there's anything special you want to see in Amsterdam, let us know in the comments. Cheers guys, see you in the next one.